Chevrolet spotlights the news. Your Chevrolet dealer, who invites you to see and drive the record-breaking 1956 Chevrolet, brings you Robert Trout with the latest news from the CBS newsroom.
The world's most powerful communists view one of the world's great triumphs of architecture and give their opinion. Some details after a word from Chevrolet.
The Pikes Peak record stood for 21 years. Then along came the 56 Chevrolet. 'Twas on the Pikes Peak Road, high out Colorado way, that a mountain was challenged by the new Chevrolet. They gave her the gun and she started her climb, ran right to the top in the world's record time.
Yes, the 56 Chevrolet smashed the Pikes Peak record and proved its safer driving control. Like to traffic test this record breaker, you can see your Chevrolet dealer and ask for a demonstration drive. Once you take the wheel and drive it, you'll be sold on the record-breaking 56 Chevrolet.
Soviet Russia's Premier Bulganin is not feeling so well after 2 days of visiting India. Today, on a sightseeing trip, Premier Bulganin was content to sit quietly and say nothing, and when he had to move, he was assisted by guards. Communist Party boss Khrushchev did the talking for both. The two Soviet leaders were shown the Taj Mahal, the great marble tomb that is generally considered one of the marvels of world architecture. And Khrushchev said this building shows how talented and clever the Indian people are. But, he said, such edifices were constructed at the cost of the common people. The Taj Mahal shows how the rich lived, czars and kings, and how much labor was spent on them. A good deal of labor was spent on Bulganin and Khrushchev today. Police with submachine guns lining the roads and leading the parade of motor cars. The two Soviet leaders were flown to the city of the Taj at the head of a party of 8 plane loads of Russians and Indians, the Soviet aircraft manned by Soviet crews. One Indian Air Force navigator was assigned to each Russian plane, but was kept carefully screened off from the Russian crew by a heavy curtain. Reporters in India believe that the visiting Russians are making a big impression with their daily hints that India needs heavy industry, and perhaps Russia will help India to get it. Important a prize as India may be, no one believes that Soviet Russia will give India any substantial aid. The Russians cannot afford it. But apparently that will not dim Russia's popularity. The carefully conditioned Indian people regard every ounce of help coming from Russia as worth 20 times as much as the same amount of aid from the United States or Great Britain, who are looked upon as rich uncles who won't miss it anyway. British Foreign Secretary Harold Macmillan in Baghdad to inaugurate the alliance of the 5 nations that stretch from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean, today told reporters at the Baghdad airport he's returning directly to London Wednesday. Contrary to the earlier rumors, he will not stop off in Cairo to try to soothe the quarrel between Egypt and Israel. There was more trouble off the coast of Turkey on the British island of Cyprus today, an open attack by terrorists on a British army post. No casualties, but the gun battle was the climax to Cyprus's worst week since the terrorism began last March. Also in the afternoon news, at least 8 killed, 80 injured when an excursion train carrying Welsh miners to London for an outing went off the tracks near Oxford. In Italy, American opera singer Maria Meneghini arrived in Milan and said those process servers back in Chicago acted like Zulus. And in another part of Milan, a city jail prisoner caught stealing money from the warden's safe said he needed that money to pay his fine. In Gettysburg, White House Secretary James Hagerty, commenting on Adlai Stevenson's Chicago speech last night criticizing the administration's foreign policy, said he probably had to say something for $100 a plate. And as the Democrats moved out of Chicago after their meeting, New York's Governor Harriman said the meeting was certainly not a nominating convention, and it is too early for anyone to have the nomination clinched. Now, a word from Chevrolet.
This is Art Baker reminding you to see and drive the record-breaking Chevrolet 456 at your Chevrolet dealers.
Listen tomorrow evening for Robert Trout and the news. This is the CBS Radio Network.
The local news is next on WCCO, Minneapolis and St. Paul. The Minneapolis Savings and Loan Association's 64-year record for fine business dealings wasn't built on thin air. Plenty of hard work, wise management, and foresight have gone into building that reputation. Last year, business increased $20 million, and investors received that increase in 4 consecutive 3% dividends, a record in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And along with big results money-wise, Minneapolis Savings and Loan gives you convenience after convenience. There's the Save by Mail plan, for example, whereby you invest by dropping savings in your nearest mailbox. Postage is paid for you both ways by Minneapolis Savings and Loan. Then, if you drive, you get 1 full hour's free parking. In Minneapolis, it's Pete Stone's parking lot, 3rd Avenue South and 8th Street. In St. Paul, it's the Victory Ramp, 4th and Wabasha, or Ballard's Ramp Garage, Kellogg Boulevard and Wabasha. These are only a few of the advantages you get when you invest at Minneapolis Savings and Loan Association, the sign of the tree, 8th and Marquette in Minneapolis, 4th and Wabasha in St. Paul. Now, the local and regional news, as written and edited by the WCCO News Department. Well, the Northwest, or most of it at least, is enjoying one of the most pleasant days it's had in some time. Temperatures early this afternoon ranged up into the lower 50s and may have gone even higher since that time. The highest temperatures reported so far are 51 at Sioux Falls and 50 at Rapid City. Throughout most of the rest of the 5-state area, there were temperatures in the 40s, though North Dakota remained on the cooler side, with readings mostly in the 20s. Minot was the coldest spot early in the afternoon. The temperature there was just 15. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that the balmy conditions are going to last too long. Colder air will move into the Dakotas and northwestern Minnesota tonight, gradually overspreading the rest of the region tomorrow and tomorrow night. The cooling off will not be as severe as some of our earlier cold snaps, however, and there should still be many above freezing temperatures in the northwest tomorrow. There may be some rain in South Dakota and northern Iowa tonight or tomorrow, and snow flurries are predicted for northern North Dakota and northeastern Minnesota sometime during the next 24 hours. Our Twin Cities forecast is for partly cloudy and warmer this evening, becoming mostly cloudy and a bit colder tonight and tomorrow. Winds will be northwesterly at 10 to 20 miles an hour tonight, becoming northerly at 10 to 15 miles an hour tomorrow. The low tonight will be 20, the high tomorrow 35. The low tomorrow night will be 25. At the moment, it's a pleasant 42 degrees in the Twin Cities. In view of the colder weather ahead, here's an item of interest to you ladies. Every woman can own a fur coat right now at Peterson's prices. At Peterson Furs, 57 South 9th Street in Minneapolis, prices are sensationally low, with reductions of 50% and more. And here is this week's feature at Peterson's. Natural gray and dyed black Persian lamb fur coats, priced from $295. The coats were made to sell for much more, but for a very limited time, you can get one for only $295. These Persian lamb coats and many other furs are finest quality, and they're custom made. So be sure to stop in and see them at your first opportunity. You couldn't find a better value anywhere in town. And don't forget, Peterson restyles coats too. So if you have an old fur coat that needs a bit of alteration to bring it up to date, bring it in to Peterson's for restyling. Prices run as low as $29.50. All restyling is done by the owners of Peterson Furs, and it's fully guaranteed. Better stop in at Peterson's as soon as you can. The address is 57 South 9th Street, across from Radio City Theater in downtown Minneapolis. The telephone number is Bridgeport 8241. Remember that, Bridgeport 8241. Well, it's official now. Michigan State will represent the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl game on January the 2nd. Commissioner Tug Wilson announced this afternoon that the Spartans have received the nod. Their second-place ranking in the conference entitled them to the trip. Ohio State, the conference champ, was ineligible to make the trip because they played in the Rose Bowl last year. It appears that the Spartans will be meeting the same team they played in their first trip to Pasadena 2 years ago, UCLA. The Bruins won the Pacific Conference Championship with 6 victories in as many league games. Pacific Conference officials are expected to certify UCLA as their representative in the game at a meeting tomorrow. When the two teams played on January the 1st in 1954, the Spartans trimmed the Bruins 28-0, as you may recall. Both Michigan State and UCLA lost one game this season. Michigan State was beaten by Michigan 14-7 in their second game, and UCLA was trimmed by Maryland 7-0 early in the season. As you probably know, the reason the game is being played on January the 2nd this year is the fact that New Year's Day is on a Sunday. A 26-year-old Duluth mother lies near death at St. Mary's Hospital in Duluth this afternoon, critically burned in the fire which claimed the lives of her husband and her 3 children last night. She is Mrs. Wallace Ellefson, who jumped from a second-story window in her home when fire broke out shortly after 11 o'clock last night. Trapped in their beds by the flames were her 30-year-old husband and the couple's 3 youngsters, 4-year-old Douglas, 60-year-old Patricia, and 7-year-old Arlette. Badly burned about the face, hands, and arms, Mrs. Ellefson struggled, unclothed in below-freezing temperatures, to a neighbor's home across the street after jumping from the building. The neighbor wrapped her in blankets and called an ambulance and the fire department. The home was completely gutted. Firemen probing in the charred ruins this morning found the remains of the 4 bodies. They say that a leaky gas line apparently touched off the fire. We'll have more news for you in just a moment. As the likelihood of snow and wet weather increases, so does the need of your car for proper chassis lubrication. For as water and grit splash up from wet pavements, rust and wear threaten the life and safe performance of your car. Now, expert thorough lubrication is a specialty of Standard Oil dealers. Thousands of them are trained to know and protect every chassis checkpoint. And now Standard Oil Research has equipped these dealers with a remarkable new lubricant called lithium multipurpose grease. This lubricant is nearly twice as resistant to friction heat, provides tougher, longer-lasting protection against water and dirt. Remember, for safety's sake, for greater driving pleasure, lubricate every 1,000 miles. And when you get set for the winter miles ahead, see your Standard Oil dealer for his specialized lubrication service. Another reason Midwesterners agree you expect more from Standard, and you get it. A traffic accident near Oklahoma, South Dakota, has killed 2 persons. The victims were 35-year-old William Chapyevsky of Grand Forks and 18-year-old Margaret Hankey of Kimball. Miss Hankey was a passenger in the car driven by 22-year-old Roderick Rutan of Chamberlain, who was injured in the accident. The 2 cars collided head-on a curve near Oklahoma about midnight. The deaths raised the 1955 South Dakota traffic toll to 180, 12 more than at this time last year, and just 9 less than for all of 1954. The death count in Minnesota deer hunting accidents remains at 3. At least 2 other hunters died of heart attacks. One of the latest victims to be reported involved a 32-year-old St. Paul man, Victor Weber of East Robbie Street. He was shot this morning near Velvet Lake, which is about 17 miles north of Crosby. That's the news as we have it up to this time. News written and edited by the WCCO News Bureau. Cedric Adams reports the news tonight at 10 on WCCO, St. Paul, and Minneapolis.